The industry, although it's transformed over the last 15 years, it's still very much about relationships. It's about who you know, it's about dealing with people who like you and like your work. It's about forming those relationships and building on them, as much as it is about great work or even just good work. It doesn't just have to be great. I think the thing that the students need to know is that they can't graduate expecting doors to open. That actually you've got to be starting these things earlier on. It really is a long path to get into a position where you can solely fund your work through photography. I remember after the first 2 years after graduating, I spent 2 years doing crappy PR jobs, because that was the way that I was able to make some money to concentrate on my own work, and then go and I spent a lot of time going to see picture editors, going back to see them, showing them new work, thinking of ideas I could pitch to them, but at the same time balancing that with kind of trying to make a living and pay my rent. And so, in some ways it's no different now. It's just finding different ways of doing it and using your kind of nous to work out how you're going to make that balance. It's very important to have a longer term plan. Of course, it's very rare that you stick to that plan, but I think if you don't have goals to aspire to, then you're swimming around in this kind of photography soup. I think it's important that you think clearly about where you hope your work's going to be in 1 year and 2 years, so that you can evaluate at each stage where you are, where you're at. I think it's important to form good peer groups, so there is a kind of a more supportive network, particularly that kind of first 2 years out of university, because that in some ways is the hardest period. You've had this quite enclosed relationship, and then suddenly you're out there and you're kind of expected to somehow kind of make a living, and it's getting through that initial time that is the key. Don't expect to be winning awards and getting accolades as soon as you leave. That kind of takes time, and often actually it's the ones that get those accolades later on that have a longer term career. It's easy to come out with a big bang, but actually then there are much higher expectations on you. So actually, in some ways, I think a kind of slow and steady progression is a good way to go. Because you have more time to build the foundations of your career on which you can settle a kind of more established routine.